Hello friends, thank you for joining me today on this channel. In this video, I would like to share my experience of preparing for CAEL English test. The purpose of taking this exam for myself was to apply for government license and become a regulated immigration consultant. At the beginning, I took an IELTS test just because I've never heard about CAEL, I never tried it before. And I was familiar with IELTS format. I was really close to the score that I needed, and I was only missing half of a score for one of the sections. And imagine how close I was, and it was still not enough to apply for government licensing exam. After I shared my unsuccessful experience with my friends, they recommended me CAEL exam. I found it very useful to watch YouTube video about this exam. My next step was actually trying to attempt the test. And I believe CAEL exam has one free test on the website. I strongly recommend you to do that before the exam. And also I purchased some additional test packages just to practice more. This exam consists of several parts. However, compared to IELTS exam, some of the parts are mixed. The exam will start with a separate speaking session where you need to reply some questions, and the questions I found very easy and straightforward compared to IELTS. For example, CAEL exam would ask you, why do you want to study in Canada? However, IELTS exam might ask you, are you following teenage fashion? And it could be challenging to reply such questions. It might take a while to prepare a good response. Some people might find it difficult because some parts of the test incorporated into reading and listening. You will hear a passage and you will also read a paragraph related to the same topic. And then you will be asked to reply a question based on the information in both of them. And it might be challenging just because the topics could be chemistry, physics, or something that you're not very familiar. Let's say I would like to study and become an economist. So of course, business topics will be easier for me to discuss and to listen and to read rather than engineering. My tip there is do not give up. Even if you find this topic challenging and you might not understand completely the paragraph or listening part, don't give up. Just try. You will always have a reading passage in front of you, and also you will have lecture notes while you're replying to speaking questions or preparing to reply. Even if you did not completely understand the lecture, you can always read a couple of sentences from reading passage or from lecture notes. It might help you to come up with your own answer. Especially if you're feeling stuck and nothing comes to your mind, you can always read one sentence from reading passage and one sentence from lecture notes, and then try to rephrase it and develop your thoughts. My other tip is do not focus on making notes. In this exam, your lecture notes, as I already said, will be given to you. Next part is reading, and I also have some tips for that. Do not read the whole text. It's similar to IELTS. You never expected to read the whole passage. In fact, you will not make it on time. My recommendation to read first, last, and middle sentence. Don't read all the sentences. You might not need this information. The goal of the test is to test and evaluate your skill, how fast you can find the required information in the text, not how fast you will read the whole passage. All questions are divided into two groups. First group is general questions, and the second group is specific questions. Specific questions will ask you some details. Let's say there might be a question, what was the favorite color of this king? You can go to the paragraph where you remember it mentioned the king, and you can search for colors. But be aware, it might say, oh, the least favorite color of this king was gold. And this king was really passionate about purple. But take your time and be careful with the details. This is a specific question and it tests you on your attention to details. However, it's really easy to find a reply to a specific question because it's always related to a particular word. So always search for keywords for specific questions. The general questions usually ask you, what was the main idea of this paragraph? What was the author reaction to this situation? You can find it in a conclusion because it is logical. At the end, you always express your opinion. Whereas introduction gives you an idea of what will be discussed in this passage or in this lecture. So listen carefully. Introduction and conclusion are very important, and there is 100% a question hidden in those two parts. Most of the time those questions are just general questions, not specific. The third part of this test is listening. You will be given time to read the questions first before you will hear the lecture. Use that time wisely. My recommendation would be read all the questions one by one and quickly select the related answer that you think might be correct. You might be lucky and you might come across a familiar topic and you will know the answer even without listening the lecture. So you can click on that answer in advance. However, you have not heard the lecture yet. It's just made on your assumption. Picking an answer helps you to focus on the test, to focus on the questions, and feel relieved that you covered everything, even though you still have time and you will listen to the lecture, and during the lecture you will correct your answers, but you feel relieved. Don't think that your answer that you selected is correct and only listen for that answer. Try to listen for the question, not for the specific answer. The questions will be in the same order as the author would go through the lecture. But that there are a couple of questions that are more generic, that ask you about author opinion and might not be even mentioned in the lecture. You should get this idea from the whole context. And of course, even if you don't know what's the right answer, try to guess. Don't leave it empty. You might gain some points if you found the right answer. And the last but not least is writing section. Writing section is the most challenging section, at least for myself. In comparison with IELTS, first writing assignment is based on listening and speaking. So you will hear a lecture on a specific topic, and also you will have a reading paragraph in front of you as well, and you will be given time to read that paragraph before you provide your answer. However, my recommendation is always take some time, just 3 minutes, for creating a plan. Memorize the formula of successful essay. A plan should consist of 4 sentences. First sentence is introduction sentence. What is it about? Usually you can rephrase the question that is given to you as an introduction. Never ever skip an introduction. You will get points if you just create a 1-sentence introduction. At least 1 sentence, but I would recommend 2 to 3 sentences, even 4 sentences if you have enough time. The next part is a first body paragraph. So you just need to create a sentence that you're gonna be developing later on. This sentence should be in your plan, and it should describe one of the points that is relevant to the question, and it might be in listening or reading. And then the second paragraph, again, it might be another point, or it might be some methods that were described in a listening or reading, depending on the question. So you get that information for the body paragraph number 1 and number 2 in listening and reading. And the last section is conclusion. Usually you are asked to provide your opinion on a subject matter that was discussed in reading and listening. It will remove the stress because you will already have 4 sentences: introduction, body paragraph, second body paragraph, and conclusion with your opinion. Always try to learn some vocabulary on how to create introduction, how to create conclusion. It will save you some time on exam, and also it will relieve your stress. Sometimes you might not be totally familiar with the topic, or you did not understand the lecture and the notes of the lecture are not very helpful for you. You can just try to rephrase what you've read. You might miss some points for not providing a full answer and not providing the reasoning that was in the lecture. However, you still gonna get plenty of points for covering introduction, conclusion, and body paragraphs based on reading that is gonna be in front of you the whole exam. So try your best and don't be discouraged if you missed something. And last but not least, I would like to wish you good luck, and I hope that these tips would be helpful for you. If you have any questions, please write them down below. Thank you, and I'm waiting for your feedback.